We're going, thank you. We are going to call this meeting to order. Good evening. It is 7:03 p.m. on August 1st, and this is a public meeting of the City of Portland's Police Accountability Commission Subcommittee on Research. The closed captioning is turned on in Zoom as another means of assistance. Please note that this is an automatic captioning service and is not always accurate. The city supports access to meetings of the Police Accountability Commission and can provide other language support as well. Please email in advance of future meetings, either as a response to public meeting notice or directly to policeaccountability@portlandoregon.gov to ask for assistance to ask for access assistance, including interpretation into other languages. This meeting is a public meeting subject to City of Portland's administrative code and Oregon state law as being recorded. For this meeting, the chat function is enabled for commission members to communicate with each other. Members of the public will be able to ask questions using Zoom's Q&A feature. As the commissioners are presenting and or discussing things, if attendees have questions, please feel free to submit them through the Q&A. We hope to use this feature to help guide our conversation during the meeting and future meetings and agenda topics. We'd like to be clear that not all questions will be answered during the meeting, but if answered, both the question and the answer will be visible to you and will become part of the meeting's record. To access this feature, just click on the Q&A icon in the middle of your screen. And now we'll move over to Dr. Moses for the land acknowledgement.
Trying to find the unmute button. Thank you so much. The purpose of our land acknowledgement is to center the traditional native inhabitants of the land upon which we live. We want to respectfully acknowledge the Chinook, the Clatskanie, the Kalapuya, and the Multnomah and the Clackamas, two tribal nations who are missing from this map, who are now part of the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde because of the genocide that occurred in the creation of this country. We honor those who have stewarded this land throughout the generations, and we pay our personal respects to their elders, both past and present. Thank you.
We will now go to community agreements. Please take a moment to read these. I'll give you a moment to read these. And then at the end, I will ask if people are in agreement with these agreements. Thank you. Can I see a show of thumbs, hands, if people are in agreement with this? All right, thank you very much. And I will pass it to the co-chairs to discuss the timeline. Thank you.
Sorry about that. Everything just fell off of my desk at one time. I'm sorry to be such a mess tonight. Hi, I am Angie Tomlinson, a co-chair, and I would hold on one moment, please. I'm so sorry. Following today's meeting, here, am I in the right place? I'm so sorry. Okay, the commission is currently in the fact-finding phase of work, expected to last through the end of August. It includes hearing from stakeholders, identifying barriers to accountability in Portland presently, and examining systems of accountability from other jurisdictions. It also includes increased community engagement work. Future phases of work will develop the parameters for the new police accountability system before the commission presents that to the City Council in 2023 for their consideration and approval. Following today's meeting, here are the next several upcoming meetings of the PAC. This subcommittee will meet next week, currently scheduled for August 8th. The PAC Subcommittee on Community Engagement Events will meet on August 15th. The PAC also meets as a full commission each Thursday in August to discuss areas of agreement that it develops, as well as those developed by the subcommittee and referred to the full commission. This slide is the current project plan for the fact-finding phase of the Police Accountability Commission's work. It's not the agenda and it's not set in stone. This slide is mostly for members of the public to be able to understand how the commission gets from now through the end of the phase, which focuses on identifying areas of agreement among commission members as to barriers to accountability in the current system, best practices from Portland and other jurisdictions, and suggestions to consider from experts, as well as taking public comment and meeting with key stakeholders. Today's meeting is in the green box just below the center of the screen with the purple border. And today's meeting agenda focuses on hearing member research conducted since last meeting, as well as discussing commonalities and items that members would like to include as best practices or practices to avoid from other jurisdictions. We'll start with other jurisdictions, hearing 4-minute reports on each jurisdiction from the subcommittee member before discussing which items subcommittee members would like to recommend that the full commission designate as best practices. Then we'll identify next steps in research on other jurisdictions. We'll repeat the same process with experts and academics or subject matter experts, then take public comment towards the end of the agenda. So now we will be getting reports back from subcommittee members. Sophia is not able to be here tonight, but we would like to hear from Catherine, and I'm going to turn off my camera because there's a wasp in my room right now and I need to get it out. So, but I am still on. I can still hear you. So, okay, thank you.
Be safe, Commissioner Tomlinson.
Thank you.
Catherine,
You want me to proceed?
I think we can proceed.
Okay.
We'll hear you. Yeah.
All right. So I researched the the oversight system for LA County, which is basically the system for oversight for the LA County Sheriff's Office. And I don't know if everybody else is experiencing this, but it really feels like the the genesis of these oversight systems we're looking at begins with some horrific story. And in Los Angeles County, that horrific story was Sheriff Lee Baca and deputies serving under him, basically running a jail system that was full of corruption and abuse. And after various investigations documented that, the FBI started to investigate the LA County jail system, including through informants in the jail. And one of the informants was smuggled a cell phone, and the deputies found that cell phone and realized that the only number that informant was calling was the FBI. So they realized they had an FBI informant in their mix. But the way that inmate got the cell phone was to bribe one of the deputies. So there was a lot of concern that this FBI informant would basically rat out the entire corrupt system or ring that was allowing smuggling into the jails under the oversight of these deputies. So they basically decided to hide the informant. They changed his name and obscured his location and did everything possible to put him out of touch with the FBI. The FBI ultimately found him, and then ultimately Baca resigned over the scandal, was indicted for obstruction of justice, and after quite a long saga was sentenced to 3 years in federal prison for obstruction of justice. His chief deputy was sentenced to 5 years in conjunction with the same scandal. So in the wake of the scandal, the LA County Board of Supervisors did two things. First, they formed an investigatory agency through an inspector general's office. So that's a model we've seen elsewhere. It's a much more limited investigatory agency than in other jurisdictions. For example, the OIG gets the complaints, but then refers the complaints, if they decide they're meritorious, to the sheriff's office for investigation. The OIG does not typically do its independent investigations unless the sheriff's office asks it to. So they're definitely, compared to other models we've seen, they have a much more limited scope. The LA County Board of Supervisors then also created a couple years later an oversight board. I would say this is kind of in the category of, kind of systemic oversight, and also community engagement, allowing the community to kind of be a bridge. This commission was really designed as a bridge between the community and the sheriff's office. And we fast forward to today, where the big issue currently in LA County is the existence of deputy gangs. And so there's a long history, well-documented history of gangs in the sheriff's office, gangs of deputies that congregate. Their names are, I put a couple in the mix. The executioners is one. The banditos is another. They're all tattooed. They have initiation rites. And there's a lot of speculation that officers are encouraged to be hard charging police. Like, for example, many of the gangs won't invite a deputy to join the deputy gang unless they've actually committed a police shooting. So it's exactly, glorifying exactly the kinds of things that I think communities fear most in their law enforcement. So both the OIC and the Oversight Commission in LA have been trying to get to the bottom of this LA gang issue, and the response of the sheriff's office has been to devise subpoenas, to refuse to produce information, and the current sheriff has gone so far as to investigate the inspector general on the basis that he has unlawfully accessed personnel information of the sheriff's office. The sheriff has asked the Board of Supervisors to fire the Inspector General on that basis. The Board of Supervisors, in turn, has said they will not fire the Inspector General, and in fact have passed a referendum out to the voters to allow them to terminate the sheriff for cause, including obstructing the functions of the OIG and the COC. So it's a complete mess there, I would say. It's a real example of law enforcement just openly defying the authority of these oversight agencies, and then taking the additional step of trying to intimidate the leaders of those agencies from doing their investigations by actually conducting criminal investigations of those agencies. It's really, I can't imagine really a worse story. The person who I think we originally referred to, Commissioner Handelman, sort of got this lead that we should take a look at. LA County and what's happening there. The referral was to this the guy who's functioning as their inspector general, the person who's really on the front line. Has been really pushing this investigation of the deputy gangs, and has, in response, the sheriff's office has launched a criminal investigation of the inspector general, who's a career prosecutor, been in law enforcement his whole life, you know, is very clearly somebody dedicated to police accountability. So it's a pretty pretty sordid tale of, you know, what can happen if a law enforcement agency just decides they are not going to cooperate, despite, you know, these agencies have subpoena power. These agencies have subpoenaed the sheriff. He is just defying the subpoenas. So I guess the good news is that the Board of Supervisors down there is backing the police accountability system that they have put into place and are working to try to remove the sheriff. But because the sheriff is an elected official, they have to actually amend their charter to be able to do that. So, you know, I think this, there's some good things about the system, but I think it really demonstrates that if ultimately you don't have the power to remove the leader of an agency that is leading basically a resistance campaign against oversight, you know, the agencies can do nothing. And because in LA, the Board of Supervisors does not currently have the authority to remove the sheriff, they're just in limbo, and the sheriff is really behaving abominably. The sheriff is up for re-election in November, the same election where this charter amendment is on the ballot to allow the Board of Supervisors to remove the sheriff. So what'll be fascinating is if the sheriff is re-elected, but the charter amendment passes, because I think the Board of Supervisors will promptly move to remove that sheriff. I think the, you know, best case scenario is that the other candidate will win. The other candidate is the current chief of police of Long Beach, so a credible candidate, and you know, lots of folks are obviously behind him, trying to continue to reform the sheriff's office down there. But meanwhile, you have this underlying horrific issue of gangs openly organizing and operating in the sheriff's office, and the sheriff basically protecting those gangs on the basis that they're just social groups, and that the accountability and oversight groups are really outside of their jurisdiction by trying to investigate those gangs. So that's where we are. I suspect the FBI is probably beginning to investigate all of this too, just given their history with investigating the previous sheriff and indicting him based on the jailhouse abuses, but we'll see. So I did create, I mean, in the evaluation, I did put a few things. I mean, there are definitely things in the, you know, the model that make sense, that are good. It's just that with, you know, without the cooperation of the sheriff's office, none of this is functional. And that's my report.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Catherine. Commissioner, I'm sorry, Meaty, are you the facilitator? I'm not really sure, I'm sorry.
I saw also in the chat that Commissioner Handelman had some things from San Francisco. So please proceed, Commissioner Handelman.
Oh,
Thank
actually, first I had a quick follow-up question to Commissioner McDowell, if that's okay.
Yes.
I think you answered this question, but in the notes you sent, it sounded like the COC, the community board, was asking for the right to remove the sheriff, but what you presented makes it sound like you're saying the Board of Supervisors, which would be like our county commissioners, would be the ones to remove the sheriff. Which one is it? Do you know that's on the ballot?
So the commission, the Oversight Commission, in response to the sheriff announcing this investigation of the Inspector General, the COC, the commission, the Oversight Commission, recommended to the Board of Supervisors that they amend the charter to allow them to remove the sheriff. So the COC recommended that to the board, and the board passed that ordinance to allow the voters to amend the charter in that way. So the answer is yes, that the COC recommended to the board that they amend the charter in this way. The charter amendment would allow the board to remove the sheriff, not the commission, if that was your question.
Thank you, Commissioner Catherine. Commissioner Dan, now would you like to talk about San Francisco?
Yes, thank you. Commissioner Tomlinson and I had started looking into San Francisco a few weeks ago, and I went back to try to fill in some of the blanks that we didn't get to. I'm going to sort of run off some of the things that are highlights. I went through a lot of detail, but here are some of the things I think are very interesting. And this is something I would say is not a best practice. They're not allowed to investigate a complaint if the officer is off duty at the time. And I think if there's a policy against certain behaviors off duty, that the board should be able to investigate that. The way they compel officer testimony there is that there's one of the policies they have requires that the officers to appear, and it's not clear who issues it, but they receive something called a notice and order to appear. They have to appear at a certain date, time, and location. If they don't appear or provide 24-hour notice, they can be disciplined for it. And that's generally how compelled testimony works, that you can be disciplined if you don't follow up with it. I did not have a chance to try to call to clarify questions, so I want to know who's doing that and where the authority comes from. Also, they have a list of findings. Now, we talked about findings a little bit before. In Portland, we have 4, and they have the same basic 4 with different names. They have insufficient evidence, unfounded, improper conduct, which is what is a sustained finding, but I think it's more clear when you say that, and proper conduct, meaning it's within policy, which is what's called exonerated here. They also have these additional findings, which Eileen Luna Firebaugh recommended that Portland pick up, and they never really did it in a formal way. Supervision failure, training failure, policy failure. So that way, if the officer did something that was bad, but it was because they were trained that way, or the supervisor told them to do it, or because the policy said they could do it, then they can blame the policy and maybe fix that so it doesn't happen again. They also can set it aside as informational, or there's no finding if they can't identify the officer. Okay. The staff there, and this is something that Commissioner Tomlinson and I have found, but we forgot to mention it last time. Their staff person is called the secretary and is a sworn police sergeant, which is very strange for a body that's supposed to be so independent. So I would say that's not a best practice. And as a reminder, the charter amendment here, Portland says that the board members can't be former or current police officers. It doesn't say anything about the staff, so it's something for us to put in our hopper to think about. The board there, which is actually, it's called the DPS. I'm looking at Department of DPA, Department of Police Accountability, has several divisions. So it's not like just one person handling these issues. They have a whole division for auditing, mediation, policy, investigation, records, and outreach. So I think that's very interesting. We were told, or I was told by the New York staff person to look at the budget in San Francisco, and the budget is about a little less than $8 million a year, which is not a huge amount for a city the size of San Francisco, and it's not guaranteed like the one in our charter amendment. So I'm not really sure why they told us to look at that. So I might just double back to them, or perhaps when I talk to the San Francisco folks, I'll find out more. I have a lot of other information, but those were the kind of the highlights that I wanted to share today.
Thank you, Commissioner Hanlon. Commissioner Seemaw, you had a question?
Yeah, on the when it comes to the supervision training or policy failure, those divisions, those categorizations, is it an and or is it each individualized finding, supervision, training, or policy failure?
Well, that's an excellent question. I mean, is it also possible that the officer did something wrong and that one of those other findings might apply too? I don't know. I'm going to ask. I think it's a good idea to have it be able to be multiple if that's if you can't really narrow it down to one of those 3. I'll ask when I call.
Thank you, Commissioner Hanlon.
Commissioner Monica.
Oh, just an added, or if you could pick several of those as the cause, right? So just not one of them, but maybe it's also policy training and misbehavior all together.
Right, and I should add that one of the things that Luna Fireball recommended that we have to maybe double back to the police and find out what they do was communication failure, where perhaps the officers weren't talking to each other, and that's why somebody fired a shot because they didn't know that the other officers were there on scene. So communication failure is and equipment failure is another thing where if the radio went dead in the middle of the thing or something like that. So those are other categories that we have in Portland or that were recommended elsewhere, but they're not. I didn't find them in San Francisco.
Thank you, Commissioner Hanneman. Were there any other questions for Commissioner Handelman or Commissioner Catherine? Commissioner Seymour?
Was there any example of any findings that you were able to run into on police misconduct?
Do you mean specific cases where they applied findings?
Yes.
No, I just at this point I'm just doing reading the paperwork that's online. They do post outcomes of the cases, which is again another best practice. I think we mentioned that last time. There's a dashboard that shows the outcome, so I suppose it would be easy for me to look at that. I'll put that in my notes to follow up.
It's good to know that they have an accessible system.
Thank you, Commissioner Handelman. Any other questions for the report backs at this moment? Oh, Commissioner Seymour, you good?
Sorry, I don't mean to take up a whole lot of space.
Good.
I do want to step back and also just add a comment, not necessarily a question, for Commissioner McDowell's review for us on the findings for us on LASD. When with the Inspector General being sued by the sheriff, included in that suit is also a reporter with the LA Times as well. Just to be able to put it out there to show how incorrigible Sheriff Villanueva is.
Thank you, Commissioner Seymour. If there aren't any other comments or questions for the report backs, we will move to the discussion. So now we've heard from a couple members about the practices of other jurisdictions. We'll be able to go through the proposal submitted by members for inclusion into the list of best practices and practices to avoid. This is an open discussion and we ask you to follow normal discussion rules. Please be brief each time you speak, even though you can speak multiple times. Please be facilitated. Remember that we are now using a weighted stack in our discussion. Finally, please be forward-looking in comments. Would the co-chairs like to frame the discussion and then get started, please?
Thank you, Aimee. Yes, this is we will be going through the spreadsheet that many people have contributed to. Thank you, everyone that has had a chance to put information into that spreadsheet. I know it did take a little bit more time than expected, and we really appreciate it because now we're going to kind of go through those line by line and discuss them and try to group like comments and approve comments that we would like to, or have discussions about the comments that we would like to forward on to the rest of the committee. Thank you. And staff will be sharing the actual spreadsheet, so you'll be able to see it. You don't have to pull up what you contributed. So thank you very much for sharing that. Mayor.
Sorry about that. Yeah. So it is on the screen, and I will just move things around as you let us know what you would like to see done. But I will say that we can scroll through it really quick first, if that's helpful also as well. Just let me know when to move on, Co-Chair Angie.
Thank you. How about we do a thumbs up when everybody has seen everything or read through what's on the screen currently. So CMOB can, or sorry, Samir can move on to the next screen because we've numbered each item for reference also.
Would it be okay if would it be wanted by the commission for folks, for a facilitator to be able to read it out loud, some of these, so people can, because not everybody can see. I'm getting from the chat. How do people feel about that?
Okay, would you be able to read it?
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah,
Thank you. I
that's what I'm
appreciate
saying.
it.
Would you
Thank you.
mind me? I would do that. So if you could put it back on the screen, I can see it. Commissioner Monica.
Second, gonna drop
Just
it.
if you're gonna read it, Ayomida, would you do me a favor and kind of speak up a little bit? Because I don't have my headphones, I can't find them, and I'm having a really hard time hearing what you're saying.
Absolutely. Thank you for
Thank you
letting
so
me
much.
know that I use my outside voice. Wonderful. Yeah. And
It's also in the chat.
in the chat, yeah. Thank you, staff. So we'll just go to number 1. Can you hear me okay, Monica?
Yes.
Okay, I want to make sure I'm at a good volume for everybody. Commission approves or rejects police department policies. City council has final say. This is Oakland. The jurisdiction, the practice helps ensure community input is incorporated into adoption of the police accountability department's policy, and it's a best practice. Oh, let's see here again.
Yeah, these are all best practices at first.
These are all best, yeah, I'm just realizing that. Thank you. So I guess at this point, how do people feel about that? Thumbs up, does that look good? Okay. Reserved seats for some commission members based on desirable areas of expertise or experience, and that was from Oakland, Denver, and Seattle. Examples include people with trial experience, civil rights, and public defense lawyers, police accountability experience, lived experience. And then I see Commissioner Handelman and Commissioner Catherine. Commissioner Catherine.
Yeah.
Leifer.
I just wanted to make a comment that helped me as I was going through all these things to frame the review. And I think it was the article I sent around before our meeting that quoted Samuel Walker, a professor we've talked about before, is really talking about police oversight as having 2 different prongs. One is an agency level oversight, and another is individual misconduct and individual conduct oversight. And I think that's pretty important because it's easy to kind of have it all bleed together, but I think they really are 2 different things. And I think in some cities they have created separate agencies to review, the agency level accountability, and other agencies to do the individual investigation. So I think it's important. This one obviously is, if you're talking about department policies, is agency oversight. And I just think we should be kind of thinking about how those fit together. It was interesting in Dan's report, Commissioner Dan's report, where it seems like within the context of individual investigations, they are also kind of considering agency shortcomings. And so they're melding them. But I do think, at least for me, it's a helpful frame. So I just wanted to suggest that to others. Thank you.
Commissioner, thank you, Commissioner Catherine. Commissioner Handelman.
Sorry, I printed out the agenda and had my camera off for a while. Sorry about that. So I'm kind of concerned about our procedure here, because we're looking at the first draft of this, the first time that we're ever seeing it tonight. We are still collecting information. We're supposed to be passing this on for our fellow commissioners who have their own opinions about things, and we're also supposed to be considering the input that we get from the community engagement, which we haven't started yet. So, I kind of feel uncomfortable making decisions about whether we like or don't like these things right now. I think just having them on a list would be good. And I had previously recommended, and I don't know if this is going to be done perhaps between now and our next meeting, but to kind of group these into categories so that, essentially based on the questionnaire that we gathered together. So like there would be a section with the different ways mediation is done, a section on the different ways that findings are made. Because to me, this is just, it's a big jumble of a lot of thoughts right now, and I'm not sure I can even wrap my mind around it. I'm glad we're going through it one line at a time, but I'm not sure in terms of adopting this to pass on. I almost feel like we should just pass on the whole document, but get it a little bit more organized before we do it, without striking anything, unless there's really no purpose to have it in there.
Commissioner Angie, you have a.
Yeah, thank you. Now, so yes, I like that idea, Dan. We're still, we are, the co-chairs have been receiving information up until right before this meeting. So, thankfully staff was able to put everything in there that we have received so far, but it does need to be organized. We can all take a second and download it onto our computers right now and take a look at it, and then we can talk about, I don't know if going through it line by line, because there are, almost 70, I think, on one side, in just this section for the jurisdictions. So that might take a very long time. We could all take a look at it right now. We are not approving anything tonight at all. It is definitely in draft form. We're just, trying to get some discussion about what's there. The one thing I would like all members to do is anything that you have contributed to the spreadsheet, which I am very grateful for. Thank you very much. But if you could take a look and make sure that you have complete sentences in there, just because it just makes it a lot easier for others to read and understand if you have your complete sentences. And also the first row is supposed to be posing a question, or like what discussion point you're bringing up, and then the fourth or the third column is supposed to be what that jurisdiction is using to deal with whatever that discussion point is. And I think that sometimes the discussion point got kind of hyphenated or only made into like one word, like transparency. Let's just say it says transparency, and then the actual like justification for that transparency is a little iffy when you only have one word. So if you can all just take a look at what you contributed and make sure that if the whole team is taking a look at it, it makes sense, and I know that mine are a little choppy also. So thank you. But does that sound like a good plan of attack for us to go through, just take a look on our own right now?
I see Commissioner Monica, and then Commissioner Debbie, and then Commissioner Zemob, and then I see staff also has their hand up.
I wonder if we could share this document like in a Google Doc so that we could sit down and spend some time to think about these things before. I think that would be helpful for me. I have a very hard time like reading something very quickly and making a thought process. I just really kind of need to sit through with it for a little while, and it will help me to see what others have done with the document to maybe be able to adjust it to fit better, to fit what I have done, right, with what everybody else interpreted the document to do. Would that be something that we could do?
So just to answer the last part of that, if I may, the Google Doc is not, is something the city attorney's office has advised us against to ensure that public meetings law is being respected on all that in terms of deliberation outside. Instead of just sharing it statically, we've uploaded it, and the link is in the chat for everyone to see where it is. Also, all of the research notes submitted by members individually on individual jurisdictions or subject matter experts. It's also at that same link, as well as the draft structure that was looked at yesterday or last week, apologies, last week's meeting. And this spreadsheet is also under the draft section here.
Thank you, staff, Commissioner Debbie, and then Commissioner Seymour. You're muted.
Okay, I'd like an example. Can you explain how, like, let's look at number one. Commission approves well, that maybe is a sentence. Like, look at number three, designated alternates for commission. You said something about, Angie, you said something about it being a question. So did you want it to say, should there be designated alternates for police, for, you know, citizen commission or civilian commission? Give me an example of how you would rewrite a couple of these in a way that follows the format that you're after.
I don't have it up on my screen right now, and I will in a
okay,
moment.
sorry.
No, that's okay. If anybody else would like to jump in and help, I would
Good.
very much
The answer,
appreciate it.
Okay, Commissioner Seymour, do you mind if I answer that question?
Go for it.
Okay, so can I show the screen? Can I do the screen clear really quick? Sorry. Okay, so in the event that you've got sorry, whoop. Wrong document here, apologies. In the event that you've got a spreadsheet item that is, let's say, this one, the very first one, the idea is that it would be able to be copied and pasted directly into the draft structure that was looked at on July 25th. And it would end up looking like this, where you've got the actual practice itself is listed as the header. The identified in is the place or places where it came from. And then the justification, which, you know, could be several sentences or could just be one as it is in this example, would be there. And so, and it can be built out further over time, but this is sufficient to get a starting point down so that this is sort of a single entity that commission members, sorry, subcommittee members could choose to support, oppose, or adapt in any way. So each line should eventually, of the spreadsheet should eventually become these three subsections of a draft identified best practice. Does that cover it, Co-Chair Angie?
Yes, thank you so much. I really appreciate you explaining that.
Okay, now can I ask a little bit more? So I thought I heard you say something about you wanted that first line to be a question. Or is it okay if it's a sentence?
The sentence. I mean, it can be a sentence. It's describing what the best practice is, as
All right,
Samir said.
okay.
Thank
I
you.
must have heard it wrong. Okay.
Okay, I see Commissioner McDowell. Your hand is up. And
Thank
but before, I might pardon, because Commissioner Seymour, your hand was up before. Are you okay?
Yeah, my question was more along the lines what Commissioner Iona was asking,
Okay.
you know, differentiating what is a question versus what is a statement in here and out of, and how to kind of look across column B going down. So it cleared up my question as well.
Okay. Commissioner Catherine?
Thank you. The reviewing that was very helpful, but raised one other question for me, which is in that sort of the document that the spreadsheet morphs into, will we identify which practices are required or authorized under the charter amendment? I mean, I didn't spend, there were some that I didn't spend that much time on because I knew that they were already covered in our, they were already sort of dictated to us by virtue of the charter amendment. So it seems like that may be useful for people to, like I didn't spend a lot of time on the discipline issues. It's all, there's stuff that is very specifically has already sort of been decided for us as a best practice, I think. And I just want to, I think it is valuable to say, this has already been adopted in these places in this way, but nevertheless, I think that cross-reference would be helpful.
So right now, we're just trying to put together either the information that's about other jurisdictions or coming from subject matter experts. So we're not going to include that in the document right now, but it is something to look at going forward. Right now, we're just trying to get this, these draft documents together to present to the rest of the commission for approval. So, but it is something that I understand your point, and it is something to consider.
Thank you. So I am now confused about what I should move forward with, because everyone seems to have the document and everyone seems to have read it. How would you like to proceed? I'm going to actually defer to a co-chair for this. It's your meeting.
Like you can keep reading it.
Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, I haven't, I'm still reading through it.
Okay.
So, but like reading through it with substantive understanding and feedback.
Just
Am I,
pause me when
right,
someone-
like doing it in this particular sitting. I'm not sure if I'd be able to feel completed my assignment.
And I do have to agree with CMOB. I do like being able to discuss right now, but I do feel like a really thoughtful discussion warrants people having this document for, an hour to kind of contemplate. But I'm sorry, I jumped in before Lavisa. Please.
Commissioner Lavisa.
Sure, I just wanted to ask, is the goal to group like items together?
Yes,
Okay,
that
yeah.
is.
That is a goal. Okay, so things that are kind of roughly the same suggestion or very similar suggestions in very similar categories could go together. And then it would be like jurisdiction, Oakland, Maryland, Denver. Like it would just be every jurisdiction where we saw that type of a suggestion coming in. That's the idea. Okay. Because otherwise I was like, obviously we could just have a giant document that just has 70 of these best practices, but I guess that's not the goal. The goal is to condense it down, simplify it down a little. Okay, all right, thank you, that helps.
Thank you, Lavisa. Commissioner CMOB, and then I'm going to go back to reading the document, but I think I would like to have one of the co-chairs like pause me if somebody has a question, if you see them in, if someone wants to actually discuss something that is coming from a jurisdiction. Commissioner CMOB.
Yeah, kind of piggybacking off with Commissioner Lloyd. I think that we're coming up with our own language here, so being able to see best practices, but also being able to understand this document well enough to be able to understand what is right for us. Maybe how certain things will combine to our own specific needs for our board. So yeah, I'm with Commissioner Lloyd on that. Looking to see how we can kind of consolidate and create our own out of this.
Thank you, Commissioner CMOB. Can we go back to, thank you, staff?
Could we take like, I don't know, 10 minutes or something to just sort of have some kind of designated reading review time right now?
I would suggest doing it on when we go to break. That might be good too. Because I think this will take about 8 minutes to go through, and we can also take a longer break just to give you guys time to kind of look at these things. Since it's just something, instead of like 10 minutes, it'll be like 15, possibly 20, depending on how much time you think you'll need. Okay, so I'm just going to read these out loud. Just to kind of, so people can get it auditory as well as, being able to read it on their own time. Okay, so we were at number 3, which is, we were at number 2, but I said number 2, and then number 3. So designated alternates for commission, and that's from Oakland. That was the practice. The jurisdiction, alternates are selected along with active commissioners and are available when opening occurs. Alternates serve on the HAWK committees. So that's their good practice. The next one is selection committee for screening commission applicants, and that's from Oakland as well. Jurisdiction, consider having a committee of community volunteers designated for screening applications, conducting interviews, and then recommending. Number 5, meetings open to the public with participation throughout. Oakland, the public should be an integral part of the system and feel welcome to offer opinions and participate at full commission meetings and in subcommittees. Number 6, commission review police department budget and holds police public meetings to discuss. Oh, okay. Oakland again, commission is the place for a community to go and participate in discussion related to the police and oversight. So that's the first 6. Any comments? So I'm just going to go 6 at a time and I'll ask. Okay. Perfect. All right. 7, commission has an integral role in hiring police chief and recommends 4 candidates to mayor. It also has a key role to play in firing, and with enough votes can make that decision independently of the mayor. That's Oakland. This approach ensures community input is considered in police chief selection and removal. 8, inspector general position responsibilities from continuing DOJ or court monitored type of oversight ensures allegations of misconduct are thoroughly investigated, identifies systematic practices and policy needs improvement. Commission hires and fires IG. IG provides a layer of systematic oversight and ensures city remains in compliance with requirements in settle agreement or consent decree. And 9, inspector general reviews all misconduct investigations to ensure they are complete before findings and discipline are determined, and that's Seattle. This practice helps ensure agency and or internal affair conduct through investigations. And number 10, thank you. Open, transparent proceedings and misconduct cases until 2006, Police Oversight Agency held open, evident, and event, I can't say that word, I'm sorry. Basically evident hearings of misconduct complaints and public investigative reports. The public could follow the case to understand exactly what the allegations of misconduct were against identified officers, how the complaints were investigated, and what the findings and recommendations for discipline were. California court cases ended this practice, but Oakland advocates point to it as best practices, even though it's no longer possible in California. So something to take note. 11, sworn officer appeal hearings open to the public. That's Seattle. Some appeal hearings are open to the public if officer chooses arbitration, then they are not. Best practices would be having all appeal hearings, both from the complaint, I can't say it right now. Complainant, there we go, and officer open to the public. And the number 12, spell out required content of agency and commission annual reports. That's also from Seattle. The annual report should contain certain data and information that should be spelled out in the code. All right, so for those 6, were there any comments or questions or additions or anything that you may want to discuss? Commissioner Handelman.
Yeah, well, I'm finding that I'm not meaning this as a criticism, I'm just making an observation, but the justifications kind of go back and forth between an explanation of what the jurisdiction does and a justification saying this is why it's important. So I don't know if we need to have separate columns for those 2 different ideas, but that's just what I'm observing from what we've gone through so far. If people want me to give an example, I can do that, but you know what I'm saying? Am I making sense? Anybody else agree with what I just said? Yeah, I see somebody shake their head. Okay, so yeah, and then I kind of feel like I want to spend my 10 minutes taking this and putting it where the things that are similarly themed are grouped together, because that would really help me wrap my mind around all this. But maybe we should just do that between now and the next meeting, because it's going to take longer than 10 minutes, I think, to do that. But I'm willing to help with that if somebody, I'm not sure how the editing of this is happening right now, but I'm willing to help with that.
Thank you, Commissioner Handelman. Commissioner Lavisa?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, Dan, and I appreciate it, because I was thinking the same thing as I was writing the, justification, and thinking like, okay, am I writing justification or am I writing further explanation? And yeah, it can get kind of blurry. I wanted to say something that is a possibility for something we could maybe use some of our time on today. I appreciate what you're doing, Ayamide, and I think it does increase accessibility for folks, because there may be people watching the Zoom who are also having difficulty like reading the size text. But something that we may want to do either at this meeting or next meeting or something is using categories, kind of roughly putting a category along with each item of like, discipline or transparency or selection of officers or something like that. And then we could pretty much more easily see, I think, which things kind of go together.
Thank you, Commissioner Lavisa. Commissioner Catherine?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, maybe this will just require study, but what I'm finding confusing is that many of these jurisdictions have multiple commissions or multiple oversight entities. And when I mean, I feel almost like I need to go back to the notes to understand, okay, is this the Oversight Commission? Is this the Investigatory Commission? Is this the Inspector General's office? I mean, I just think we might need, as we're compiling the list, to end up being a little bit more precise about referring to a commission as an investigatory commission or an oversight or auditing commission, just to make sure that we're understanding, you know, what they're not all the same, and different ones have different, you know, they have, their authority is different, their scope is different, so it isn't quite, some of these appear to be relevant to an investigatory type agency, others maybe not so much. So that's, I'm not sure how to deal with that, but that's a confusing area for me. I'm looking at this. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Catherine. Were there any other comments in the 12 that I've actually read? Okay. I would say that it is 8:03. And I think this would be a good time to pause and give you about 15 minutes to take a break and to get yourself water, bio breaks. Please do all those things, they're important. And also look over some of these notes and maybe get through this a little bit faster. So we'll come back at 8. Oh, now I just my brain was like, had it in there and then it changed. At 8:19.
I am going to start us off on the next.
It would be number 13 is the next one, and then just do the next 12. I'll be right back.
Very good. That sounds good. Hi, Dan, Commissioner Dan. You're on mute. You're still on mute. Commissioner Dan, you're on mute. You're still on mute.
I hear that you said I was on mute. I don't know why I did that. I did not mute my computer. All right, so if it would please the court, what I would like to do is upload the document that I worked on during the break, that where I left the numbering in as it was, but I put them in some order up to about number 35, I think it is. And I'm hoping that we can use that, and maybe it'll help with those of us like me who are having trouble reviewing it when there's not categorized. So, like I said, I only got through about, well, I got further than I thought. I got through number 47. So if you're going to pick it up from number 13, then maybe we can just jump to the category that's in, which is reporting, and then double back for any ones that are above that. Is that okay? Does that make any sense?
I'm totally fine with that. I think this speaks to Commissioner Lovisa's suggestion of categorization and helping us organize. So I would be glad to go ahead and read from 13 on. I have pulled it up on my my end, and so I'll be glad to do that. And I think staff have the document now, so it would be at line 34. It says reporting. Yep. And so I am going to read line 13. Include an online tracker for implementation of commission recommendations. This is from Seattle. Placing a recommendation tracker on the website gives the public the opportunity to see which commission, city Civilian agency and IG recommendations have been implemented. The Seattle Tracker provides reasons for the recommendations that have not been implemented, and it gives a website. Number 20, set number of oversight board meetings focused on public comment, with one specifically tied to oversight board's annual report. This is a suggestion by Denver, a best practice by Denver, involving the community and advancing transparency should contribute to system success. Number 45. Every case reviewed is posted with details on complaints, findings, outcomes, with names if complainant allows, as well as names of the officers involved. Reports will be published in public websites that are easy to search and are able to use for looking for patterns, etc. This is by Philadelphia. Philadelphia has decided that the way to gain accountability and trust in the police department is to be as transparent as possible. Ayumide.
Yes, something changed.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did.
Wow, that was quick. I was quick as quick as I possibly can, but you know,
right? It just went
biology. So what is going on now so I can just follow?
Yes. So I am at the far left-hand side, number 37.
Mm-hmm.
And if it is under reporting, and these are categories that Commissioner Handelman created while we were away.
Thank you, Commissioner Handelman. Okay, fabulous. All right. I had a feeling, but I just wanted to double check. That's what I was seeing. Thank you very much.
So I just jumped into where number 13 was, and number 13 is here in the reporting area.
Thank you.
Sure. So number 38 on the far left-hand side is actually number 47. Post closed case summaries online, Seattle. Seattle Office of Police Accountability post closed case summaries online. They include a summary of the incident and alleged misconduct, as well as the director's response to each allegation of misconduct. If discipline is imposed, the type and severity of discipline is also included. Ending this section that we have so far on reporting, are there any questions by commissioners? Okay, next section is collective bargaining. Number 14. A representative from the police commission has a seat at the bargaining table in contract negotiations. This is Seattle. Having a commission member participate in police union contract negotiations would inject the community perspective. Number 33, more transparent collective bargaining.
I would skip this one just because it's Portland.
Very good. Number 46, list names of commissioners and alternatives on meeting agendas. Agendas for Oakland Commission meetings, list commissioners and alternatives names. Note Oregon open meeting law requires meeting minutes summaries to include the names of commissioner members. And so those are the collective bargaining best practices that have been put together. Are there any questions or comments that the subcommittee has on this section? Commissioner Dan.
Dr. Moses, yes, that last one, it was supposed to be pasted in the reporting section. I pasted it in the wrong place. In my haste, I'll fix that up. And just whenever you're ready to loop back to the top, numbers, I'll put them in the chat, but numbers 24, 16, 17, 18, 19, 21, 32, 40, and 15 are above where we are. So I'll put those in the chat so you know where to look for them.
Well, let's go ahead and go back up to the top then. I think that's a really good idea. We'll just, I'll try and identify the ones that we have not looked at yet. So going back up to the top, I know 24. Yes, thank you, Commissioner Dan, for putting them in the chat. Number 24. And this is under policy. Is that correct, Commissioner Dan? Yes,
Yes,
okay.
that's correct.
Thank you so much. Number 24, Oversight Board has authority to make recommendations regarding policy and training. Denver, Seattle, and Oakland identified these. Oversight boards develop an understanding of police officer actions and their impact on community members. Recommending policy and training improvements based on that understanding has the potential to improve police department operations. Very good, thank you. Under makeup of Oversight Board, we're gonna, selection of Oversight Board, we're gonna drop down to number 12, number 16, yep, number 16. Nomination Committee appointed to screen and nominate candidates for Citizen Oversight Board, 4-year terms. Denver. Having a committee screen, interview, and check with Oversight Board on specific needs brings community priorities into the process. 4-year terms would bring consistency and longer term knowledge. Very good. We're going to go to underneath terms and removal of Oversight Board members. Number 17. Seated Oversight Board members can apply for another term. Nomination Committee decides whether or not to forward their name to the appointing body. Appointing body may reject the recommendation. This is Denver. Having some longer serving members brings institutional memory to the Oversight Board. It is important for nominating committee and appointing body to decide if that person's skills and expertise are still needed on the board. And number 18, specific number of unexcused absences constitutes a resignation. Denver. Portland needs to think carefully how to handle attendance so our new commission is not hamstrung by unfilled seats or commission members who don't have the time to fully participate. So that was a lot of reading that I did.
I'm willing to go next.
I'm looking back over here to see, are there any questions, any further discussion about any of those particular areas that we looked at? All right, I think we're in a good place.
Okay, so now that they're all been categorized.
I would say just a bit more than half. I think
Okay,
Commissioner Dan said like the first 45.
okay. And have you gone through all those, or is there still more?
There's still more.
Okay. Great. I don't mind taking over the reading. I just need to know where I need to start.
You are going to start at quorum.
Okay, let's see, where am I?
It's
Thank
number
you.
16. Yeah, yep.
Okay, the highlighted one.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. Hold on a second. Okay.
Number
Quorum. Okay, this is the one. Okay, quorum based on number of seats. This is not a Seattle Police Commission practice, but there is an annual report. Notes of high absentee rate and the number of meetings they canceled because of lack of quorum. Okay, and let's see, 21. Regularly scheduled community oversight board public meetings with agency director, chief of police, and manager of public safety. This is Denver. The jurisdiction, open meetings with leaders in public safety and accountability given, accountability give the oversight board and public the ability to discuss critical issues, ask questions, and consider policy issues. Oh, and this is the, oh, sorry, I skipped. This is public nature of meetings and hearings. So quorum was 19, and then now we're in public nature of meetings and hearings. That was 21. Okay. And then I guess I need to go to 32. So I'm reading all the ones that are highlighted. Is that correct? Or am I supposed to be reading the rest of them?
Neither.
Neither.
It's the numbers above 13 in column A. The ones that are highlighted are the ones that.
Or
you-
Portland that I'll just skip. Yeah. Okay, great. I'm just wanting to make sure that I'm seeing the right things. So I can start, let's see here. I'm at 40. Is that where I'm at?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
40
It's just, and then I'll just read the rest down. Yes?
Well,
Is that how it's set up?
number 40,
Mm-hmm.
really big on the right-hand side and needs to be expanded so you can see the whole thing.
Okay, yeah, because I can't see it.
Yeah. Then the next one, then the next one would be budget, and we've already seen that.
Okay, and that was number 15, right? Or is budget and starting with number 6?
Budget starts with number 6, and you've already read that.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm just coming in halfway. So I
Yep.
have to use a restroom.
Great, doing great.
Okay, number 40. The proceedings of the trial board are open to the public, except in certain circumstances, such as to protect the identity of a victim. The subject officer may not be compelled to testify. And then this is the jurisdiction. This was from the state of Maryland. The trial board is the least civilian controlled part of the system. So making proceedings open to the public as far as possible increases transparency. It appears that the trial board meetings may be open to the public largely due to the fact that the subject officer may not be compelled to testify. It is possible that if the subject officer has not been compelled to testify before this point, and they do not choose to testify at the trial board, no guarantee, I just want to make sure, or Fifth Amendment self-incrimination challenges would be implicated, which would allow the proceedings to remain open to the public. However, it appears that the officer may choose to testify, which would likely trigger the same concerns as the Louderman hearing. And the hearing would likely need to be closed and partially closed to protect the officer's Fifth Amendment rights against self-incrimination. That one is a big one.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the next one that we're going to go to is audit functions, and that's number 17 or number 15. I apologize.
Great. Oh, thank you. Thank both of you, Commissioner Handelman. Okay, number 15. Sentinel event review. This is a process overseen by the Officer of Inspector, the Office of Inspector General, and led by a select group of community members, police representatives, and OIG. It studies in depth a significant and undesirable events and with the goals of prevention. And this is Seattle. I remember hearing about this. A board review of incidents of concern to the community for the purpose of learning from past mistakes gives the community and the police the opportunity to learn and develop new policies and practices that will lead to better outcomes. Okay. And
Beautiful.
then reporting.
No, we've been there.
Okay.
We're gonna go to staff, which is number 22.
Okay. Agency director is hired and serves at the pleasure of the oversight committee. And this is in Denver and Oakland and their jurisdictions, giving the oversight board commission the authority to hire and fire the agency director makes the system more accountable to the community. This is already built into Portland's new system. So that's something to note. Okay.
26.
26? Okay, good. All right. Appoint screening committee to select candidates for agency director who will be forward to the oversight committee. After a community process, oversight board selects new agency director, and that's Denver. The jurisdiction screening committee is made up of an oversight board chair, city council member, current or retired judge, director of career services authority, person with extensive knowledge of police oversight or internal investigators, but has never worked in Denver in law enforcement, and a justice system involved community members selected by the oversight committee. So all those folks, but someone that's never worked in law enforcement. And that's for Denver. 27, employ a community process when selecting agency directors. And that's Denver. Screening committee forwards 3 candidates' names to oversight board. Board conducts a community process and selects a candidate to recommend to city council for appointment. City council confirms oversight board has the authority to fire the agency director. Okay, and then are we going into board authorities? Okay,
Yep.
great. Oversight board has the authority to direct, monitor, to investigate certain cases, review, close cases when the monitor conducts the investigation. Board has access to certain portions of personnel files, investigative files, and may make recommendations regarding quality of investigation and findings and discipline. That's Denver. The jurisdiction for Denver is the oversight board serves as the eyes and ears of the public. So the more involved they have, the more involved they have to have in investigations, the better. Okay, designate categories, and this is 25. Designate categories of cases for automatic investigation by civilians review agency, regardless of internal affairs roles. Cases include use of force, in custody deaths, profiling protected classes, untruthfulness, and First Amendment assemblies. This will be my last one because we should go on to the next section. I just want to put that out there for folks. And this is under consideration in Oakland. And acting community police review agency director Aaron Zisser suggests this approach and would be a good way to ensure that serious cases were always investigated by civilian agencies, even if internal affairs was still conducting investigations of cases that did not arise from a community complaint. Okay, I'm just gonna give everybody a time check. It's 8:42. And CMOB, I see that your hand is up.
Yeah, just kind of giving a suggestion over a relevant part that we just read. OPB has put out an article under Jay Levinson that draft rules to govern police conduct in Oregon leaves a lot of wiggle room. And new proposed rules for cops in Oregon, they won't necessarily be fired for sexual assault or targeting of people for their race, gender, or other protected class. So it's proposed rules that are being drafted right now. I will. I'm reading off that off my phone, so I'll pull up the article and link it in the chat. But I figure it's important.
Mhm. Thank you, Commissioner CMOB. I'm just going to conclude this section of our meeting, just so we can get some report backs from the subcommittee, commission members on the other of the experts and experts and academics, or some suggestions to consider. Proposals to avoid experts in academics. Thank you. And I believe Monica, Dan, both have report backs. Commissioner CMOB, did you? Okay.
Sorry, I forgot to lower my hand.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to double check. Monica, would you like to go first since we haven't heard from you yet?
Sure. So I had a week to look into NACL. It is a lot of information. I haven't heard back from 2 people that I wrote to. It was just like 2 days ago. So it's a huge organization. I'm going to share my screen and basically go to their website and go through it, because I think that's just the easiest way to get a hold of what this organization does. Let me see. I think it's going to be here. Oh, I'm going to share my calendar first, I guess. No, I don't want to do that. Stop sharing. I wish I was better at computers, honestly. I think part of my
Would you like to go second and give yourself a chance to find it?
yeah, that would be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes. Commissioner Dan, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm not going to give you much time though, Commissioner Arce. I tried to reach out to Samuel Walker and didn't hear back. This is like the response these days. I don't think has anybody actually talked directly to an expert? Or did you talk to the NACOLE people? No, you just read their website. Yeah, I don't know what it is. You don't like us or something. But I haven't heard back from any of the people I've been trying to get a hold of.
Okay. Well, I found a way to get into their website. So I'm going to go through this website really quickly because it's actually quite informative. So that's a good thing. Okay.
We've been probably on their list of practices to avoid for a few years.
So this is, I'll just go through here. The home for NACL. And actually, when I first went into this website, I was like, we should go to these conferences and these trainings, because they are all about police, National Association for Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement. They've been around since 2012. Their whole purpose is to provide guidance, recommendations, best practices to civilian oversight of police. And this is what they, in very simple 1-word terms, what meaningful civilian oversight is defined as, according to them. So let's go to that that part of the webpage. And so here are descriptions of each one of their topics of what meaningful civilian oversight means to them. So oversight is an important first step toward police accountability and transparency in communities. It is proactive. It's not just reviewing misconduct. It can include independent analysis of police data, use of force, stop and frisk, other procedures, financial auditing and recommendations, review of policies, independent investigations, proposals to address systemic issues, and more. It is independent, not subsidiary of the police department they oversee. They must be independent of political processes, must be independent and permanently secured financially, must have independent voice. It's individualized for each community. So it requires a board that is from our local area. Community-driven oversight should be conducted in part or in whole by the people most impacted by policing in their communities. It is empowered, so has subpoena power. It includes a statewide repeal of laws that prevent public access to and publication of police records on discipline and other matters of public concern. It will make final decision-making authority and disciplinary matters, adjudicating use of force, recruiting practices, creating policies, transparent. All meetings should be public. All operations should be transparent. They are an investment in the community. And so they should be well-funded. And it should be a process that can be looked back and adjusted as, things change. So that's what they think meaningful police accountability is. They have a whole bunch of resources in their website, several reports on different police accountability systems in different cities. They have the 13 principles are more described in here. Again, independence, clearly defined and adequate jurisdiction and authority, unfettered access to records and facilities. So, a lot of the things that we have found in different places that we like and a lot of things that we found that we didn't like, they describe in detail why things work when they do and why things don't work when they don't. Anyway, I think it's a wealth of resources and information. I have a feeling that the people that wrote our ballot measure were looking at this website very, very carefully. And boy, I mean, there's a wealth of information, and I think we could fill out that whole Excel sheet with all this information and find how different cities have used those ideas in their police accountability designs. I don't think I don't know how long I've been talking, but this website is so extensive that you could go into every section and have a lot of reading to do to catch up on what they're talking about.
There's a question from Commissioner Debbie, and can you put the website in the chat?
I'm not very good at that, but I can try.
Or somebody. Commissioner Debbie.
I didn't grow up with computers, people. Yes, Debbie.
I
Commissioner
was gonna say, you can also find that book I've mentioned in the past at this website. It's recently done by the Department of Justice, I think, through that COPS federal grant program. And I've read parts of it, and it really, it's very, really helpful and not hard at all to read. And you can kind of pick the sections that relate to, our work, and you don't have to read the entire book. So, so when you look at the website, take a look for that book, because since it's so recent, it seems like it's particularly useful.
Thank you, Commissioner Debbie.
I'm going to stop sharing.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Monica. So we are at 8:51, and there's supposed to be discussion about at this point what Commissioner Monica has found, since Commissioner Handelman was unable to reach his person, and there is no website for that person. So if there isn't any other comments or questions, I can go to public comment as well, since we'd be going next. Commissioner Handelman.
Well, I want to say that, you know, we've touched on this before. I want to make sure the ongoing learning of the board gets put as a best practice, because that's really important. And I also want to offer that after the conclusion of this meeting, I will take the other 25 or however many categories there are and put them into categories and send it back to staff, so that as more information gets entered in, we can just keep the numbering going up from 70 and then hopefully add them in the categories, because I thought it was really helpful to have it categorized tonight. So
Agreed.
thank you. I'll do that as soon as the meeting's over.
Thank you, Commissioner Handelman. Commissioner Catherine?
Yeah, I mean, now that this is organized, like I see it and it's organized and it's categorized, I think it is a much easier exercise to understand how we are to populate this. And I guess I would like to maybe see if we could, I mean, it just seems awkward to be populating and sending in individual Excel spreadsheets, especially because they're hard to redline. So in this case, where we're working on an active spreadsheet that we're discussing at a public meeting, I'm wondering if we could use a live spreadsheet that is, you know, the equivalent of a Google Doc, but it's a, otherwise I just feel like it's going to be, I don't know how people are going to track. I'd like to go in here and like some of the stuff I can add into some of these categories, because I know, you know, the research I've done would help me just, you know, plug in like other examples here. But I guess I would like to be able to do that in a spreadsheet that we're all working on, so that we are not, it doesn't become just a big editing mess.
I think the staff might have an answer for that for you, Commissioner Catherine. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
so from a city attorney guidance perspective, we are allowed to use a Google Doc during a live meeting. So that is fine. However, it would need to be something where we could show it all at once and all that. I will say that from what co-chairs have mentioned, the instruction we've been given on the staff side is to essentially that there'll be a Word document of the draft document that we'd be circulating, asking for redlining, as was done in March with the agenda and scope, values and goals, bylaws, and community engagement framework. And then all of that can be consolidated and sent back around to the commission members with the track changes showing. Again, similar to how that document and then the internal process and stuff in May as well was done. So everything was, it will be converted over to Word in the way that we showed earlier. And then, so by the next meeting, it'll be in a Word format. That's what we were given. So we'll talk to co-chairs about that and get their insight on that in between this meeting and next. And certainly Commissioner Handelman's categorization will make that exercise much easier for everyone. So thank you.
May I also make a suggestion to the commission? Maybe similar to what you guys did in terms of splicing up the roles in who, like what you're going to investigate, what areas we're going to investigate, maybe the categorization, maybe some like one person can take, you know, quorum, or you know, just that way when we're going through it in the next meeting, then there's just a group, one person will be in charge of one section. Does that make sense to what I'm, Commissioner Monica?
I think that would make sense. There is a few things that I identified in Philadelphia that I didn't put into this Excel document that I think I could add on to under quorum, or I could add on to under membership, and I don't want to miss that opportunity.
So would you want to be a person that does quorum stuff?
No, I'm just saying in general, those are examples. I mean, I could find things about Philadelphia in a lot of these categories is what I'm saying. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes. But in terms of reporting back out, in terms of making it more streamlined for the next meeting?
I wish, you know, I'm really jonesing for a meeting in person where we could have all these sticky notes and we can put them up on the wall, right? Like this Zoom.
Yeah, killing me.
Yeah.
That plus, I just think it's overkill. I mean, it's one thing to use a Google document to have like conversations that we should be having live, but this is just organizing our data. I just do not get why that is a public records issue or a public meeting issue. For us to just work on and interact it, to organize our data, which we're, going to be talking about in public. I guess I think that however that's being interpreted, I think is being a little bit it's a little over the top, and it inhibits our work to just work on a spreadsheet in an interactive way, and that we're discussing now, we'll be discussing many times further. It's just, to me, it's just organizing our data, which isn't like substantive discussion. So I think, I think it inhibits our ability to do just what Monica was saying, which is, okay, I know of these 5 examples too. I didn't put that all in my evaluation, submission, because it was just too much to capture in every, I would have 1 million cells I would have submitted, but I can add quite a lot to this document if I can just have at it. Maybe if we just like take turns editing, or at least we're editing in sequence, then it won't be quite such a mess. I don't really know, but I feel like this maybe we're taking the city attorney's advice a little too literally, not to be able to populate a spreadsheet with data that we're researching and discussing publicly.
Commissioner Seamob, and then we're at 8:59, so I want to make sure that we end relatively on time.
Yeah, I think that's where the utilization of staff actually comes in. There isn't a public body that will research and do everything live in public's view down to the letter. A lot of the editing and sometimes compilation is handed off to staff within commissions, city councils, and whatever local larger scale government structure you can think of. So oftentimes I think like what happens is that, we can spend times as subcommittees basically gathering and putting together our thoughts and ideas, but then allow staffing to be able to take on the role that they're hired for, understand what messaging is, condense, consolidate, present it to us, and we clear whether it's met our bar or not. So I think there's the ability to basically try and maybe even let go a little bit of some control sometimes, and that's actually a good thing.
Thank you, Commissioner Samir. I need to go to public comment, just for the sake of time. We will now take public comment on the issue of the subcommittee's discussion. What the subcommittee on the issues of the subcommittee's discussion. Blech. Our community members can also tell their stories about policing and police accountability. We ask members of the public to keep their comments or questions to 2 minutes in length and raise their hand in Zoom if they'd like to speak. I'm not seeing any hands. Are you seeing any hands? Okay, so I believe there is no public comment at this time. Thank you, members of the public, for being here. And we'll next go to the garden plot. Do co-chairs, facilitators, or staff have any recaps for us?
I have put limitations on staff of the board being current or former police or law enforcement officers. I also have potentially adding supervision, training, policy, communication, and equipment failure as outcomes of findings. Identify specific best practices provided by the charter amendment. And looking at our organization of data from an auditing, oversight, and investigatory perspective. Those are the ones that I have.
If I could just add one thing, there are some highlighted items in the spreadsheet, which were identified as by members as of the subcommittee as best practices or practices to avoid from Portland. And those will probably be placed in the parking lot for inclusion in a different document, the one that is being drafted at the full commission level, which is the areas of agreement on best practices. On barriers to police accountability and best practices in Portland. Thank you.
Okay. Well, it is 9:03. And I want to thank the members who attended today's meeting for your contribution today. Thank you to our briefers. Well, thank you for reporting back to us because there's no briefers today. You were the briefers. So thank you so much for taking time and your time and energy to report back to us today. Thank you to our staff and facilitators. And this thing is tiny now. Let's see. Thank you to the members of public for being here and contributing your questions and thoughts. You can give written comment in advance of future meetings at tinyurl/Portland PAC comments. Please sign up for email updates on the Police Accountability Commission at tinyurl.com Portland PAC update. It is 9:04 and the meeting's adjourned. Thank you for your time, commissioners. Always doing hard work, and we appreciate your service. Thank you.